let's say there's an employee in your workplace that pisses you off.
Hmm.
Every time you see them, you're just frustrated and irritated because they're not performing well, or you guys just bang heads. I have a friend that consistently bangs heads with his boss, and so he's been trying to deal with the problem, and they just do this. They go up and up and up and up and raise up the level of frustration over and over again. And then he started using the tools and went,
Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Query, your host and CEO founder of Guide to HR. Today, we're going to be talking about leadership support, as well as a lesson learned from a founder. Kyle is joining me today from Blue Shirt Coaching. Kyle, welcome aboard.
thanks, Guinevere. I appreciate it and glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I grew up in California on an orange farm, which most people never have even seen one. And there are orange farms in California still. There's a lot in Florida, but they're in California as well. And grew up doing that work from seventh grade through high school, pivoted on into college and decided not to pursue the family business, which in retrospect was still a good decision, but my family just sold it. And so there's a little sadness because I was a part of that for a while, but they sold it, and that's a wonderful thing. And then moved into this men's mentoring program that I was a part of for 10 years, lived in the house with guys that are 18 to 25. They're really struggling in life, helped them create what we call the life map. And that was really the beginnings of my coaching career and learning people and learning psychology and learning the challenges that people face at various stages of life. So I did that for a bit and then stumbled around a little bit in corporate and then a little bit in HR, and then I really like coaching. There's a thread that goes through my whole life related to that. And so committed to starting this business about 6 years ago.
That's great. So I said earlier, we're going to talk about lesson learned. And as a founder, you have a really tough one that I'm really grateful you're going to be sharing with us today, because I hope that those listening really hear this story and learn from it to not have the same experience that you have had. So tell us a little bit about some of the recent changes you've had to make to your business and why.
Sure. So a year ago, I had to rebrand, and that was in the moment. I was very pissed off and frustrated and angry about the whole situation. But what had happened is I went into the USTPO or PTO, however you say it, but the Trade and Mark and Patent Office, and I was trying to trademark an old business name. And when I did that, I paid the money, submitted it, got the whole thing moving forward, and I was really excited to have a trademark on my business. And then this monster $8 billion gorilla said, "Nope, we've got that name and we do nothing like you, but you can't do this." Actually, they said they do things similar, and I'm creating marketplace confusion. So I lawyered up, and the lawyer said, "No, they're wrong. You're not creating that. What they do is very different compared to what you are doing. So why don't we talk back to them? Let's write them back." So this was all exchanged over email. It took about 9 months of email back and forth. And if you want to frame it up like you're standing in a classroom or on the recess, the 6-foot seventh grader is talking to the 5-foot sixth grader and saying, "You can't do that." And the fifth grader saying, "Yes, I can." The sixth grader saying, "No, you can't." And we went back and forth for a little bit. And then finally they said, "No, really, you can't." And I said, "No, really, you're right. I'm not going to do it anymore because I don't want to go to court." My lawyer did say I would win, but it would cost me 50 grand. And at the time, that would have been a majority of the savings I had in my business. So I said, I think we're going to pass on this. So that was at Christmas roughly last year that I made that decision. And then on the 26th of December, started the rebrand to Blue Shirt Coaching. And I'm grateful for it. And later in the show, I might be able to use that story to describe how perception is reality. And so that has changed things for my business, ultimately in the long run, in a really good way.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that story, because we had a podcast a few times ago where brought on a legal counsel, and we talked about, when you're starting your business, to make sure you do your due diligence in regards to the naming of your business, go for the patent and things like that. And it sounds like you did. It just sounds like someone else thinks that, with a lot more money in their pockets, is going to fight you on it. And it was just like, okay, I'm going to just bow out. I'm the little one here. I'll do something different, which actually turned out to probably be better for you in the long run. But lesson learned here is that, even if you do your due diligence, there might be still something that can come at you unexpectedly to have to make you rebrand. And we all know, as business owners, rebranding is not the way you want to spend your time or money doing if you've already got something in place. So I'm really sorry you went through that, but
Yeah.
it sounds like coming out of that negative experience, you have a positive outlook on how it's impacted your business for the better.
Yeah, and I would just add a little tag on here. To me, if I were to redo the whole dang picture again, I would just go with my name as my business. I would go with my name, or if that's not a fit for your business type for the listeners, make up a name. Honestly, you've got the Google's a real word, but they added an E, and there's all kinds of these other names of businesses out there that are really funky. So there's no way someone else has that name. And I
Mhm.
think that's why they do it. So if you're wondering what to name your business or you're looking to rebrand, use your own name if it makes sense to use your own name, or just change it to a made up word. And
Yeah.
fortunately, we've got ChatGPT and Bard and other AI out there that you just put it in and then it'll give you a bunch of funky names and it'll help. But that was a mistake that is fine in retrospect. But I think if I would restart, it would just be Kyle Gillette. And that's that.
Yeah. 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 Makes sense. All right. So switching over to what you're doing, your blue shirt coaching. You're here to talk about coaching the founders and business owners. So, question for you. What have been some of the themes that you have seen last year that you think are going to come in and continue forward into the new year?
For my clients, it's been accountability. And not, I
Mm.
don't mean morally or ethically, none of that. That's not their issue at all. It's just more, I want to do ABC, but I'm not. And I'm sick and tired of not doing ABC. And it's really screwing up my business, my marriage. I've had those types of introduction conversations where they're telling me that, and that's their issue is accountability, because they want to do certain things, but they're either not efficient enough or they're not productive enough or their team's not doing whatever. But ultimately, it boils down to it's their problem and
Yep.
they need to deal with it. And so they need the support of a mentor, a coach, or whatever to help them work through it. Because if they had figured it out on their own, they would have already worked through it. So someone else
Yeah.
needs to come alongside them.
Yeah, it's someone who can help you kind of put a mirror, right? You are a mirror to them. You are able to help them reflect on what is going on and find those darker holes to like dive into more. What are the roadblocks that are mentally stopping you from doing what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so when I'm working with my clients, there's a framework that's like a broad framework. I have my own umbrella of blue, which I'll give you the acronym real quick. Blue is be a self-aware leader, lead with accountability, use a growth mindset, and empower others. So that's my framework, and that's the cycle my clients go through. They become more self-aware through this first step that I'll mention in a minute. Then, because they're more self-aware, then they can lead with better accountability. And then because they're more self-aware and they have accountability, they're going to grow, period. It's just what happens. And because you grow, you have to empower other people because we all stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. And we stand on the shoulders of those that we get to influence and lead as well, because they're really the ones that are carrying us when we have big teams, right? So
Yep.
once you're empowering people, now you have this new area where you're going, wow, I'm not aware of how to do that super well because I've got this new team, this new level of leadership that I have to live through or work through. So now I need more self-awareness. But with all that comes the self-sabotage, the doubt, the negative emotions, the baggage. And so for my clients, it's all about the first thing that I do with them is figuring out what all that stuff is and helping them to release it, to let it go. Because we're carrying, all of us in all areas of life to some degree or another are carrying baggage that we're not supposed to carry. This stuff, this self-doubt, these negative emotions, these limiting beliefs that really don't, they're not for us. They're not helpful at all. They are only harming us. And my work initially with my clients is to go, what is all that stuff? Let's get it out so that you can be free to create from a space of clarity and confidence. But when you're carrying that stuff, you can't create from a place of clarity and confidence. And so therefore your production, your quality of work, the quality of leadership suffers. And so does everyone around you. And so I work with people for 7 to 8 hours, their first couple sessions, to get rid of all that stuff. So what I do is I guarantee that whatever area they choose, whatever area of life they choose to focus on, that within 7 to 8 hours, we're going to get rid of all that baggage and they'll be clear of it so they can create from a place of clarity and confidence.
Wow. That's great. So for the listeners out there that may not yet like kind of resonate with this, but are like, oh, well, maybe I could do this on my own. Obviously, you do need a coach. You do need it's therapy a little bit, right? But is there like a step that someone could take before reaching out to someone like you? Is there like a step that we could just highlight here for someone to get started on
Yeah, to get to know me or to get to start the process in general.
to start the process in general?
Yeah. So what we need to do is we have to disassociate or separate, if you will, ourselves from the problem, whatever the problem is. So let's say there's an employee in your workplace that pisses you off. Every time you see them, you're just frustrated and irritated because they're not performing well, or you guys just bang heads. I have a friend that consistently bangs heads with his boss, and so he's been trying to deal with the problem, and they just do this. They go up and up and up and up and raise up the level of frustration over and over again. And then he started using the tools and went, wait, I don't have to act like this. I don't have to respond like this. So he saw himself from a new perspective, a new angle. And that's one of the first things you can do is find someone or take your own time to look at yourself from a new angle. And I highly recommend you do that through journaling because it's easy. Everybody can do it because you have a phone or you have a pen and pencil, I mean, or pen and paper. It's not hard to do. And you just put the situation down on paper, or you put it down into your phone, typing it in, or if you don't like to type or write, talk into your phone. And then you can look at it afterward or listen to it if you want to afterward and go, wait a second, that's dumb. Why am I acting this way? Or, that person isn't as bad as I think they are. And then that shifts your perspective. And that's where the change, the release starts to happen.
I love that. Yeah. And maybe too having a moment of like, oh, there's something missing here. I don't have full context. And it's like maybe there's an opportunity then to like get more context. I know sometimes for me, I will react on something and I have to take myself back and be like, okay, why am I reacting this way? We all have triggers, right? I mean, we constantly talk about the fact that we're triggered on the word trigger at this point in time.
That's funny.
But we all do. And so like even like when you're in that moment thinking about like, okay, why am I reacting this way? Why am I getting triggered? What's going on with me? Because it probably is not necessarily the situation or that person. It's probably something else that is just like an added on, and it just like made me go, made me get really upset about something. And so having that self-awareness is so crucial as a leader to be able to just like, okay, pause for a moment, right? Like just take a moment, think about how you're reacting, think about how you're going to respond to that person so you're not escalating and you can actually have a professional adult conversation.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is an emotional experience. And and
I'm glad
people,
you say it like that because it truly is.
yeah. And if we forget that it's an emotional experience and we try to stick in the doing part, the strategies and tactics, which are valuable and important, we're gonna mess those up because the emotions will get in the way of coming up with good strategies and tactics, or they'll just get in the way of doing the good strategies and tactics because we're pissed off that, or we're frustrated, or we're sad, or whatever emotion, because we didn't get the sale, or because the person didn't do what we thought they would do, or we didn't do what we thought we would do. And so learning how to be aware of those emotions and all those things, which I know does sound a little therapeutic, but we need to do therapy on ourselves all the time, right? Like, when was the last day that you had where everything was perfect? Everything just went smooth and you didn't get frustrated and you didn't get happy. You were just flatlined. We never have those days, right? So we have to be really in tune to that to lead ourselves and others really well.
Yeah. And to stay level-headed as a leader, you cannot be a roller coaster that your employees and your business is experiencing because it won't survive.
Yep.
It will derail.
I
You will
agree.
derail your business. Yeah. So what are the other things that you're seeing that are popping up that might be something helpful for the listeners today in regards to running their business?
I've noticed that a lot of leaders are very capable. Founders, CEOs are very capable of doing the work of the business, and they're actually really great leaders too. The thing that happens is a lot of us have seen like the Marvel movies lately, or the DC movies, and you've got the Superman and you got the Wonder Woman, let's say. Often what happens is Joe, Susie, Bill, whoever brings a problem to the business owner. So in my case, I'll share a story about this lady that she's running two different schools and getting ready to open a third school. And when
Wow.
we first started, she's from New York and she is a hard driving, direct, no beating around the bush. This is how you do it, firm and in control woman. And she's very capable and she should be like that because it works. But sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. So when we first started working, this was something we worked on was how does she temper that? How does she adapt her personality type to fit those around her in those moments? And fundamentally there was something that I challenged her with. I said, how are you empowering your team? Like what does it look like to empower your team? And she didn't really have a good answer. She didn't have clarity around it. So since then I've created a process, but fundamentally I suggested to her to ask a forward question. Very simple. You can remember it right now. It's what do you think? What do you think?
Mm.
And depending on the tone, will change the response. But someone comes in and they're bringing a problem, and instead of pulling on the Wonder Woman suit or the Batman, well, either way, the Superman suit, and going, "I've got the solutions. I'm going to rescue. I'm going to save the day," you say, "Well, what do you think?" And then you shut up. Like you just shut up because it's going to get awkward because that might be one of the first times you ask that question. And so they don't expect
Mhm.
it. And so you just got to be quiet, let the awkward 8 seconds, 10 seconds, even 30 seconds pass between the two of you or the meeting in the room and let it pass and be okay with being uncomfortable with that. And then if you consistently do that, you'll find that people will come up with their own solutions. And in her case, she's done really well at that. And it resulted in several people leaving the organization because she quit thinking for them. And that's a good
Oh,
thing. And then she found people
yeah.
that think for themselves, which is a
Hmm.
better thing to have employees that think for themselves.
Yep.
And she had a teacher come into her office. This was a few months ago and brought her a problem. And my client said, "Well, what do you think?" Literally, she told me the story, and that was her question. The teacher, blah, 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 blah. And then stopped and said, "Thank you, Gabriel." That's the client's name. "Thank you, Gabriel, so much for helping me with this. I appreciate it. Thank you for being such a great listener." Walked out and had a solution. She said
Mhm.
4 words. How beautiful would that be if we can get that sometimes in our leadership?
Yeah.
Because I know we can't always just toss it back at the employee.
Right. Well, and to double down on that, she said 4 words, and it took her maybe what, 10, 15, maybe even worst case, 30 minutes of a conversation. And that walked out. And she could get back to what she needed to do as a business leader. She didn't have to then go and get herself sidetracked and go deal with it. So she saved herself a ton of time as well.
Yep. We want to prove to our employees that they can think for themselves and that their thinking
Hmm.
is better than our thinking because they're working in a very specific area, or maybe they're working generally, depending on the size of the business. But either way, we've hired them to do that work. And we
Yeah.
trust them, I hope, because if you don't, then you shouldn't have hired them. But we trust them to do that work. And if for some reason you don't trust them right now, that's a you problem, not a them problem, because you're the
Yeah.
leader. And so that's where perspective comes in. That's where we have to think about what is our perspective and shift our perspective, which isn't as hard as most people think.
Yeah. I love this idea because the other thing, like triggering it from an employee perspective, right? Being in human resources, I'm all about employee engagement and making sure that everyone is working really well together. This also helps your employees be able to grow and learn and be engaged. And all of those things trigger them to be loyal and stay with you and have more buy-in to push to get things done towards the business of the growth and the goals of the business. So it's like a win-win situation. You've actually reduced work for yourself while empowering your employee to be able to take on more and do more for you. And the more that you do that, the more you're able to like step back and do less and be able to focus on bigger things like a third school. Maybe for you that means a second product, or it could be that you're going into a different market, or if you have locations, maybe it's that you're opening up another branch, right? So
Or
yeah.
vacation.
Oh, what's that? I don't know. I love that word. Yeah, what's that? Vacation. Yeah, because then you build the trust and you know that if problems are happening, they're going to get resolved while you're on vacation.
Yep. Yep. It's wonderful. Can I share the model that I've
Yes,
developed and learned
please.
from other people for empowerment? So in my book right now, Leadership, I talk about these steps, not as in there's a component of this that I've added even more detail to. So you get like this insider track on what I've learned since writing the book. But there's 5 pieces. I'll give you the 5 and then I'll detail them in. So the first one is expectation. Is expectation and awe would be the first one. The second one is to study. The third is to listen. The fourth is accountability, and the fifth is celebration. So
Mm.
expectation. When you go to watch a movie and you know the movie's going to be really good. I don't know what movies you're into, Guinevere, but when you're watching a really good movie, what do you typically do? I'm literally asking you, what do you typically do when you're watching a really good movie?
I'm completely engaged and just sucked in. I'm living in the moment.
Yep. And before you even started watching that movie, you assumed it was going to be good, right?
Yes, I have expectations that it's going to be good. Or
Yep.
maybe I don't because I don't really know what I'm getting into, and then it makes it even better. But most of the time, you see the
Yep.
trailers a billion times, so you have these expectations of the quality of the movie. Yes.
Right. So this is what we need to do with our employees. We go in and we go, I am going to assume that this person is fascinating. This person is going to be really great at what I've hired them to do because that's what I want from them. And I'm going to expect that of them. So then what this does is every 2 seconds, our brain experiences 2 million bits of information that it has to filter. And we can only filter it into 126 bits that our conscious mind handles, right? So my voice, whatever you're doing, whether you're driving or sitting or whatever you're doing, you're taking all that sound, sight, feeling, and maybe if you're eating, what you're tasting, and what you're smelling, right? That's what we're taking in every second, 2 million bits of it, but our brain only presents 126 of them and stores the rest. Okay, so if I choose to assume that this person is amazing, I'm going to grab those 126 bits. Imagine they're toothpicks falling from the sky, and every toothpick you grab has information on it, but you get to choose which ones you grab. Okay.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, 2 million toothpicks fills a regular refrigerator, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
imagine every second, 2 million toothpicks being dumped on you, and you get to choose which ones you grab. The rest gets filtered and stored in your brain. Great. So now, if I'm assuming this person's amazing, my brain then starts to find reasons why they're amazing, why the movie is amazing. And then now I can study them. Step 2, we study the employee and we learn more about them because we're curious about them. We find them to be really interesting and we have high expectations. Now we know more about them because we realize that they're a visual communicator, or we realize that they like to learn things from an auditory perspective, or they're detail oriented, or whatever that piece of information is about them. Then when we interact with them, instead of putting on the Superman cape or the Wonder Woman outfit, we ask them questions that fit their personality because we're curious about them. And because we've studied them, those questions come easily. So we ask them, and you can start simply with, what do you think? But we ask those questions. And because we care, because we've studied them, now it's easy to listen. And we're not in a hurry because we trust that they're going to come up with a great solution. They come up with a great solution, and now they're accountable to it because they thought of it instead of me. And so it's way easier to hold them accountable when you come up to them and they don't follow through on whatever the solution was. And you could say, hey, Susie, you mentioned that this is the plan that you had, and I really like that plan, but I noticed it hasn't come fully to fruition. What's going on with that? And then they'll
Yeah.
own it because they came up with it and they know they did. And then lastly, you celebrate them. When they come up with an idea, we celebrate the setbacks and we celebrate the successes. Because if you don't celebrate the setbacks, then they won't come up with solutions on their own because they know they're gonna come in with the solution and then you're gonna find a way to zap them, and then they don't want to try again.
Yeah.
So you celebrate those setbacks, meaning you celebrate the effort, not the result. Same thing with the successes. You celebrate the effort. It's like with kids. I'm not equating adults to kids, but in terms of the way we like to be
Sometimes.
appreciated, all the time that works, and sometimes we do act like children. So those are the 5 steps. Start with fascination, study, listen, and ask great questions. Accountability just comes naturally at that point, and then celebrate.
I love those steps. I hope that the listeners are able to process that and start implementing that right away in their day-to-day interactions with their direct reports and even with their non-direct reports, depending on how big their organization is, right? You as a leader have influence, even if the person is not even in your department. If your department, maybe you're the CFO listening today, you have influence over the engineering employees, right? In the sense that you are an executive and a leader of the company. So no matter who you're engaging with, to have that perspective is really great.
Yep.
I love that. I mean, I'm going to ask, but I feel like you've already given us so much. Is there, wrapping up here, is there anything else that you would love our listeners to hear today about what you can bring to the table for them, or things that they should be thinking about differently as they start to work through how they engage and interact with people? I mean, even in their personal life too.
Yeah, let's go back to movies for a second. What's your favorite movie?
Oh gosh, I have too many favorites, but I mean, I will say the Mission Impossible series, because that has a lot of tie with my husband. It was the first movie we saw it when we
Oh, cool.
were on our first date, and we've done a lot with it. So it's very tied into our relationship. So I'll pick that one,
Okay. So
or
in
that
those,
series.
yeah, so in those movies, all of them have some sort of a twist or a moment of realization, a moment that like changes the whole plot of the movie, right? There's this
Yeah.
shift where the good guy, Ethan Hunt, is that his name in the
Yep.
movie?
Hmm.
Yeah, Ethan Hunt is able to like now they can do it. But that's an instantaneous situation. It's like it builds up to it. All these things happen, but the moment there's this like over the edge, there's this change, there's this instantaneous shift where now for sure things are going to be different. That's how it can be in leadership. In whatever the situation is, that change is instantaneous. And we just need to decide that we're going to make that change and commit to it. And that's really the heart of accountability. I talk about the 4 steps of accountability in my book, but it's all about the heart of it is that commitment component. And I do recognize that to get to that place, things kind of have to build up, but you can instantly decide that that's where you want it to be. And I think in leadership, and why my book is called Right Now Leadership, is because you make those decisions right now. And you can make them consistently right now to change those mindsets, to change those habits as a leader. And when you do that, instantaneous change follows because you've shifted the way your brain thinks about that situation. And now it has a new aim, a new trajectory that it gets to honor. So why not start making those shifts right now?
Right now. I love that. I love that. And, no, it's not a flip of the switch to make changes mentally, right? And how you behave. So give yourself the grace.
Well, so Guinevere, I'm
Oh,
going to interrupt.
you're gonna be contradictory. I
I
love
am
it.
going to
Let's
be.
listen.
So this is how my coaching works. I show them the light switch and they flip it. I can't flip it for them. It's not possible. But I show them the light switch so they can flip it. And I know that sounds kind of crazy to change like that, but you can and you do. And I've got plenty of clients that will talk to you and say, yes, that's what happened. Because
Interesting.
yeah, because it's all about perspective shift. It's all about letting go, releasing. And so you can, and it is actually easy once you know how to do it. It's just we don't want to let go often, including me, including me. But when we learn how to do it, we can let go instantaneously. We just have to let go of the baggage. And that's the flip. Then the baggage drops. We don't carry it
Ah,
anymore. Yep.
that makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Well, a lesson learned on my part too. Well, thank you, Kyle. It was great speaking with you. A lot of great tips and tools that you have provided today to the listeners. And I hope again that those listening are going to take some of the advice and flip that switch and get it going today. Why not now? All right. So thank you everyone for joining us and have a wonderful day.